Corona has taken lives, but it's also taken livelihoods in ravaging households' food baskets, people's bank accounts and government funds. Countries are not sitting back to watch their national health and economy eaten away at by a virus, however. Iran certainly can't just sit back. The enemy is the 2019 mutation of the coronavirus family, hence called COVID-19. The microscopic entity is unseen, fairly unknown, and questionably preventable in future. Its impact on the health system and economy, however, is, as proven, greatly controllable, using wisdom, know-how, and funds. What is Iran doing to cushion its economy from the impact of the coronavirus? Some answers are here coming up on Iran Today with me, Leila Faramarzi. Action started with health precautions and has proceeded as financial aid and rescue packages. Mr. Askari is economic deputy to Tehran's Governor General.
Currently, more than 5,000 production units are paying their obligations with banks, including 16,000 billion Iranian rials in Tehran province. 12% facilities are envisaged for these units. For each employee or service worker, 120 million rials is allocated to production units. The government had shut down some of our units, which now would receive 160 million rials per each employee or worker. The production units are being introduced to the banking system. The banks are also cooperative. In parallel, Tehran Province Facilities Committee is proving more cooperative than ever. Some of our units defaulted on their commitments and they have been granted moratorium now.
Precautions were necessary but hampered fields such as tourism and transportation. Precautions such as limiting domestic and international transport and shutting down borders, social distancing and wearing face masks, officially enforcing it that is, has been a static with governments. But the strategy was not easy to maintain consistently. With a state of semi-quarantining of people, businesses started to go bankrupt and economies started to fall apart. Seeing a decrease in corona-infected cases, Iran announced plans on April the 5th to gradually reopen the country in order to move the wheel of the economy, as the president put it.
We pin no hopes on work for 2 years from now. We have already lost 2020. It's likely that we would start our talks with foreign companies in mid-2021. When something starts in the middle, it means that year is already gone. In fact, we set prices for following year. We are in fact going 2022. Smaller units are likely to experience change in the second half of the 2021, provided that a vaccine is developed for the coronavirus. If not, we have no idea what would happen. Nobody knows.
People seem to have misread the signal to open up the country in stages. They got careless. No doubt that was no help to the situation, given the government didn't enforce guidelines so much as depend on the people themselves to take precautions. And now, with an enraged wave of the coronavirus, any incentive to better livelihoods and lifestyle will matter all the more.
Even now that our production units are open based on the established protocol, if any unit flouts the protocols, the union will take action. The Ministerial Inspection Division is intervening. For the time being, only cases not respecting obligations would be dealt with. But if this number rises to cause problems, a general directive may be issued and all units, including those which have respected the rules, would face problems.
With a population of around 82 million, Iran has a labor force of 27 million. By mid-April, the government was foreseeing 4 million of the 27 losing their jobs if the shutdown was prolonged or the government didn't intervene. The Parliament Research Center estimated about 6.5 million Iranians could lose their jobs thanks to the corona outbreak.
Despite the coronavirus outbreak, the jobless rate in Tehran province was down 1.4% in the first quarter of the current calendar year compared to last year's. It means that despite the COVID-19 outbreak, the slogan of jump in production is materializing. Let me tell you something. The investors' demand for land allocation in industrial parks is growing very rapidly. Despite the COVID-19 outbreak, the industrial parks have no more land to allot. In the current calendar year, we are attaching 3,200 hectares of land to our industrial parks. As a result of this rapid work, about 1,000 units would come online this year. This is a big figure. It would create 96,000 jobs in the agriculture and industrial sector.
The Ministry of Economy identified 8 economic challenges to be met in the new Iranian year beginning 20th March. Mostly related to the pandemic, the challenges are shrinking foreign exchange reserves, lower oil and petrochemical prices, reduced tax revenues due to business losses, a deepening recession in the services sector, less global demand for mineral products and lower income from metal sales, reduced consumer demand for goods and services, increased government spending to deal with the health crisis, and a larger budget deficit. Among several initiatives to help supplement the health ministry and unemployment insurance, basically, the government approved a $6.3 billion stimulus package. A week later, on April the 6th, the leader approved the president's request to withdraw over $1 million from the National Development Fund. Mr. Pourfaraj offers up his own industry to help revive the economy.
We have 230 to 240 tour organizing companies. What if these companies survive? Should these companies survive, transportation will be activated anew, our tour guides will become active, hotels will be revived, handicraft will be sold, and restaurants will do business. The entire tourism sector will be activated if those companies become active. I should survive to be able to organize tours.
I did say Iran, for one, couldn't afford to just sit back and do nothing. This is because the economy was already strained before the pandemic struck. The US pulled out of the once famed and now notorious nuclear deal, or JCPOA. That was on 8th May 2018 when the US reimposed sanctions on this country and 6 months later cancelled sanctions waivers for third countries that bought Iranian oil. Iran's oil sales were slashed in 2019, variably, even down to a tenth and less. Then oil prices came crashing down in March 2020 globally, thanks to the global outbreak. Thanks to that coronavirus outbreak, even those parts of the Iranian economy that were immune to US sanctions took a serious blow, such as tourism, domestic trade, and non-oil exports. Still, the economy was not on the verge of collapse. Mr. Pourfaraj is chief of Iran's tour operators. He is indignant about any claims of government aid.
We have received no facilities. Even the 12% interest loans was not granted. Even the promise to grant 120 to 160 million reals per each employee is yet to be respected. Even if that loan is granted, it would not benefit our companies because I would have to receive that money and distribute it among my employees. Then, several months after, I have to repay it to banks with a 12% interest rate. I've received that money and spent it without having generated any revenue. How can I pay the money back then?
Understandable concern, but Iranian governments have had difficulty paying their own employees, whatever the reason. So I asked whether tourist industry employees could not settle for half their pay during this national and international crisis, which is Corona. There are 2 sectors that were not significantly impacted by the pandemic, at least in the first 2 months of the outbreak: industry and agriculture. And it is those 2 sectors that may yet help sustain the Iranian economy. According to the World Bank, industries accounted for 32% of jobs and agriculture for 17% in 2019. Tourism, you recall, could not possibly withstand the storm that was the pandemic. If the world has 7 wonders, Iran is star-studded with countless wonders, something otherworldly in each of its 31 provinces. Something of architecture and history, or geology and climatic variety in this land of 4 seasons at once.
Tourism agencies face a heavy burden by bringing in tourists and introducing Iran to the world. I always give this example. What is the difference between Iran and Turkey in tourism?
The tourism sector was enjoying an annual growth rate of roughly 28%. The government itself was investing in hundreds of projects in the tourism sector, which had become a lifeline for the country's economy in the face of US sanctions. But alas, the coronavirus struck right after tensions with the US had picked up to separately hinder foreign tourism. It was at a time to mess up even New Year holidays beginning 20th March. Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. For the sake of preventing gatherings alone, Iran had to actually close some tourist sites on its own accord even. Tourism accounts for 12 million of the 27-strong labor force, and when tourism suffers, a whole school of jobs come to a standstill.
The protocols are well defined. Everything has been explained in details, like getting into cars. We disinfect the entire interior of the car. We are isolating the drivers in the cars. We make sure physical distancing is observed in the car seat.
At the beginning, everyone imagined this issue would be resolved in 1 month or 2. Everyone imagined the crisis would be over by May. However, the game continued. Now, one point is that our economic actors would continue to do business, while sticking with health protocols. But the second point is that this virus may remain in the society longer than thought before. Therefore, our production units will learn to live with it by changing their model of production, distribution, and consumption. The IT capacities would need to be used to a maximum level in production and distribution. That is the point we are focusing upon.
There's quite a bit more to say after a quick break to see what other media outlets have to say. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Shahrzad Manicherry, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on the coronavirus outbreak and Iran's stance against it. In an article by Tehran Times, we see Iran to start producing COVID-19 drug remdesivir next week. Iran will start producing the antiviral agent remdesivir for the treatment of coronavirus patients next week, Health Minister Saeed Namaki said. So far, no effective and reliable medicine has been identified for the treatment of coronavirus in the world, but remdesivir is prescribed for patients with the virus in Europe and the United States, he stated. He went on to note that although the medicine is available sufficiently in the country, its domestic production will start next week. The Financial Tribune states Iran taps technology firms' potential to fight COVID-19. As the novel coronavirus resurges in Iran, authorities tap potentials of local tech firms and startup ecosystem to fight the viral outbreak. Basij, the grassroots arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, held an online nationwide tech contest to challenge tech teams and knowledge-based companies to develop ideas and high-tech items that could help battle the coronavirus disease, COVID-19, IRIB News reported. Mehdi Haqqi, the event organizer, said the contest was arranged in 4 categories, namely economic, social, and medical aspects of coronavirus and disease management. Following a public call for the innovators, over 7,000 ideas, products, and plans were sent to the event's secretary, among which 200 were selected to receive financial aid from investors to work on their ideas and commercialize their plans, he said. Tehran Times claims governments should change approach toward tourism in post-corona world, travel expert says. Governments need to redefine their approaches towards the tourism industry in order to reduce the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the travel industry as well as the economy, CHTN quoted a travel expert as saying. At the beginning of the pandemic, tourism workers and experts estimated that the world's tourism would be in a complete recession by the end of the year of 2020 and even maybe in 2021. The travel experts suggested that in this regard, the tourism industry needs to gain the trust of tourists, provide motivation, and increase the acceleration of marketing, fast and coordinated activities for marketing, invest in smart business systems and digital marketing as well as support businesses and consider economic support packages offered by the government by prioritizing the health of tourists. Tasnim news agency reveals President reiterates support for Iranian producers, exporters. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani expressed his administration's support for the private sector, saying law-abiding producers, business people, and exporters would receive special support and financial incentives. Addressing the administration's Economic Coordination Headquarters, Rouhani highlighted the leading role of the private sector's producers and merchants in the country's economy amid the struggle with the foreign sanctions. The administration's policy is strengthening and supporting the companies that are at the forefront of the battle with the sanctions and are trying to supply the necessary commodities required by the society and the raw materials, he said. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
Looking at losses, loaning becomes an invaluable notion. Eligible for government loans and aid are namely the following businesses or institutions. Each one is checked for eligibility by a separate ministry. Those are those offering meals, such as restaurants, businesses active in tourism and hospitality, namely hotels and tourist centers, they are validated by the Ministry of Cultural Heritage, and transportation companies, travel agencies, apparel manufacturers and distributors of footwear and bags, confectionaries and shops selling nuts and such, gyms and leisure centers, cultural, educational and art centers, as well as media groups, that's certainly not us, bookstores and publishers, beauty salons and driving schools, and handicraft producers and distributors. According to the Central Bank of Iran, all commercial banks are required to renew low-interest loans for the 10 job classifications which have suffered the most from the outbreak of coronavirus. Those are the above categories.
First, we had short-term policies for the March-May period. That was a short-term package which many economic actors benefited from. Regarding bounced checks, everyone was cooperative with the economic actors. The insurance coverage of workshops was renewed for 3 months. Water and power bills were given more time to be paid. The Iranian tax administration offered 100% reduction in tax penalties.
An MP, Mr. Mesri, will not have been alone as he expressed concern on the 11th of March, that's 3 weeks after the outbreak was officially recognized in Iran, that relief packages and plans may stay on paper. He was particularly concerned about unemployment insurance, saying it was for the select few. Officials in charge claim they have come a long way since. Mr. Parsa tells of concessions with tax. He is chief of the Tax Affairs Organization. What measures is the tax organization taking in supporting businesses that may have made great losses due to corona?
We facilitated the taxation process against the backdrop of the coronavirus. We halted our administrative fraud inspection procedures. Forced tax collection was suspended. First, we imagined that the impacts of the coronavirus would not last longer than May, and we made decisions accordingly.
Early May 2020 saw the Iranian government approve a 750 trillion rial package. That was $4.6 billion at the time to help low-income households and struggling businesses, small and medium-sized businesses impacted by the coronavirus. The lending rate will be 12% to be repaid within 2 years. Any rate below 12% would impose further financial strain on banks given the high inflation rate. According to Abdul Nasser Hemmati, the CBI, Central Bank of Iran governor, Inflation in Iran is between 34 and 41%. Do note, businesses would be eligible for the loans only if they did not lay off workers during the corona crisis. The measure was taken specially to encourage employment. Hemmati instructed banks to cut red tape in granting loans.
Regarding debts whose deadline was in June, we cancelled 90% of penalties in the production sector and 80% in other sectors. From the time onwards, we cut 2% per month from those percentage points. You must know that tax penalties are big figures. If 100,000 billion riyals was collected, 200,000 billion riyals was written off.
I said that during the ongoing pandemic, the government has tried to incentivize employers by granting 4 million low-interest loans to businesses that have not laid off their employees. But then there's only so much to go around, and there's not enough for workers working in the informal economy or as day laborers.
About 160,000 persons became jobless due to the coronavirus outbreak. Some of them were not officially employed and had no registered social security number. Of them, 145,000 were eligible to receive government aid, as they are now receiving.
Unemployment was quite high even before the outbreak. Official unemployment averaged 10.6% during the last quarter of the Iranian year ending on March 20th. Youth unemployment was at 26%. Rather than business loans, cash payments have been determined for low-income groups. A loan of sorts of 20 million riyals, that's $87 today, with a zero interest rate and a 30-month repayment period to employees and vendors who lost their jobs due to the crisis. There should be 4 million of them. The government also means to empower female heads of households to acquire or create permanent jobs. Mr. Parsa looks to bettering things from a taxation point of view.
A country moving towards justice and seeking to have sufficient financial resources to meet its requirements has to levy taxes, like everywhere else in the world, on income, profits, wealth, transfer of wealth, and consumption. We have proposed taxation of wealth and incomes to the government. It is being reviewed in the parliament. We will finally move towards tax on total income. Taxation on total income means a minimum is exempt from taxes for everyone. From that level upwards, taxation will increase progressively.
The pandemic also saw to it there'd be less factories online, planes in the air, and cars on roads. This is what caused the sharp decline in the demand for fuel worldwide. By April the 1st, the price of Iran's heavy crude fell to below $14 per barrel, and that was down from $44 or more per barrel in February. On April the 12th, to push prices back up to a point, OPEC and its partners, including Russia, finalized a deal to cut oil production by 9.7 million barrels by July. But a second price shock came in late April due to the shortage of storage space for excess supply.
As there's no oil income, taxes have to account for part of the state budget. We're not trying to impose taxes in any form. We target taxation based on principles, and the principle is to spare businesses any harm. We should keep in mind that taxes are imposed on profits. If an entity has produced losses, it would be exempt from taxation.
Taxing the public with all its ups and downs is handy. But how about tracking down evaders of astronomical amounts of tax who are in position, I asked.
In the tax evasion, we have focused on big figures. We currently have access to the banking information of all taxpayers. We are concentrating our minds on a number of big cases because we have no time to go through all of them. We are examining such major tax evasion cases without making fuss.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. Don't forget to watch at the same times next week and each week after, as there's plenty more to be said on Corona and other stories. And don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.